Your $80,000 safety fund is a family asset. Kelsey, stop being a selfish miser. My sister Chelsea texted. My name is Kelsey Whitaker. I'm a 30-year-old chief operating officer. For 5 years, I built that fund to ensure my parents were protected. Instead, they drained every penny to bankroll my sister's luxury event company. I didn't scream. I didn't type out a furious reply. I simply picked up their glossy grand opening brochure, sliding it right next to my finalized identity theft affidavit. At their ribbon-cutting ceremony, in front of 200 elite guests, they were about to be hit with a federal credit freeze that would instantly lock them out of every stolen dollar. They had no idea what was coming. If your family only loved what they could extract from you, I understand. Please like, subscribe, and comment your location and local time. I read every single one. Now, let's go back to the text that destroyed my credit. I sat at my kitchen counter at 6:15 on a rainy Tuesday morning, scrolling through 6 years of digital bank records on my corporate laptop. As a chief operating officer, my entire career is built on identifying systemic vulnerabilities before they collapse a company. I applied that same ruthless auditing precision to my personal life. $12,000 for my sister Chelsea's fashion design degree that she abandoned after 2 semesters. $14,000 for my father Harold's vintage motorcycle restoration project. $4,000 for quarterly family dinners at steakhouses where nobody ever reached for the check except me. For 5 long years, I channeled a total of $80,000 into a dedicated high-yield liquid safety account. It was meant to be an unshakable cushion for my aging parents if medical crises ever hit. I thought I was buying peace of mind. In a dysfunctional family, the child who builds a stable life is never seen as a person to be respected. She is seen as an untapped credit limit. 8 months ago, my mother, Sylvia, called me at 3 in the afternoon while I was in the middle of a corporate board review. Her voice had that practiced, fragile tremble she reserved exclusively for when she needed something. She told me she was organizing a comprehensive whole life insurance policy to protect the family's future. She needed my social security number, my full legal middle name, and my date of birth to list me as the primary beneficiary. It's for your own protection, Kelsey, she had whispered into the receiver. We just want to make sure you're taken care of when we're gone. I gave her the numbers. I wanted to believe, just once, that my mother was acting out of love rather than calculation. My dual-monitor dashboard suddenly flashed bright yellow at 6:22 a.m. An automated risk flag popped up from my private wealth management tracking software. My COO background trained me to spot transactional anomalies in seconds, and this one made my blood run cold. An unverified wire transfer order of $50,000 had just been drafted against my safety fund account. It was scheduled to clear at 9 a.m. Routed straight toward a commercial merchant account called Whitaker Lux Events, LLC. My fingers moved across the keyboard with cold, mechanical precision. I accessed my high-tier administrative portal, flagged the transaction as unverified, and successfully issued an internal hold on the $50,000 transfer. I had caught the theft right at the threshold. That small victory lasted less than 3 minutes. I immediately picked up my phone and dialed the priority desk at First Horizon National Bank. A customer service representative named Sarah answered on the 3rd ring. I gave my full legal name and account number, ready to freeze the entire account permanently. But when Sarah asked for the maiden name of my maternal grandmother, my answer triggered an immediate system error on her screen. I'm sorry, Ms. Whitaker, Sarah said, her voice turning guarded and distant. That answer does not match our records. The primary security questions, contact email, and phone number on this account were updated 48 hours ago via a notarized change form. She told me all verbal phone authorization was now suspended. I could not block the account over the phone. The line went dead. I stared at the dark phone screen in total silence. My mother had never bought life insurance. She had taken my social security number, forged my signature on a bank authorization form, and handed my entire financial identity to my sister. The $50,000 wire was just the first wave. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a fresh legal pad, and uncapped my black ink pen. My hand was completely steady. At 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before opening hours, I stood outside the heavy glass doors of First Horizon National Bank's flagship branch downtown. Rain trickled down my wool coat as the branch manager, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Henderson, unlocked the entrance and ushered me into his private office. I didn't waste a single second with polite small talk. I placed my state driver's license, passport, corporate executive identification, and original account opening deeds directly onto his mahogany desk. My primary account credentials were compromised electronically 48 hours ago. I said, my voice steady and measured, I am here to execute a physical fraud override. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses and pulled up the pending wire memo on his terminal screen. The details confirmed my worst suspicions. The $50,000 drafted from my safety fund wasn't an emergency medical bill or a utility payment. It was a mandatory commercial deposit for a 2,400 square foot luxury venue on Grand Avenue. The lease agreement listed Chelsea Whitaker as managing director of Whitaker Lux Events LLC. My mother had used my social security number and a forged power of attorney form to pass the landlord's commercial credit verification, guaranteeing my personal assets against Chelsea's lavish ambitions. I pulled out my black pen, filled out the institution-wide fraud affidavit, and pushed it across the desk. Under Federal Reserve guidelines, I am demanding an immediate, irrevocable lockdown on all liquid funds under my identity, I stated flatly. Mr. Henderson typed rapidly, his keys clacking in the quiet room. Before stamping the document with red ink, the system screen flashed blue before resetting account status. High security freeze active. The wire transfer vanished from the queue. Blocked indefinitely. The remaining $30,000 in my safety fund was locked down tight. My small victory came with an immediate, sharp cost. Mr. Henderson slid a yellow compliance sheet toward me. Because an emergency fraud lock was triggered following credential tampering, federal protocol mandated a total freeze on my personal checking account as well. Your entire profile is locked for 48 hours. Ms. Whitaker. Mr. Henderson explained softly. You cannot withdraw cash or use your personal debit cards until a physical, mailed paper, security pin arrives at your residence. I accepted the restriction without a word, grabbed my coat, and walked out into the cold morning air. As I got into my car with zero access to my own cash, my phone vibrated violently on the passenger seat. A high-priority notification email from Experian popped up. Alert: severe credit score drop recorded. I sat inside my parked sedan in the bank lot at 8:20 a.m. while cold morning rain drummed against the glass. I opened my corporate laptop, tethered it to my secure hotspot, and logged into the master executive portal for the three major credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. My pristine credit score of 815, built through 10 years of meticulous financial discipline, was gone. In its place, a flashing red indicator displayed a 3-digit collapse, 538. My hands remained perfectly steady on the steering wheel, but a cold realization settled deep in my chest. Locking my $80,000 safety fund had only patched a tiny leak in a breaking dam. The cash account was merely the surface layer of a much larger financial trap. As I scrolled through the deep forensic credit ledger, the true scope of my family's betrayal unfolded across my screen, line by line. 6 months ago, My mother, Sylvia, had taken my social security number and legal middle name to set up a commercial shell entity called Whitaker Lux Events LLC. She listed my sister Chelsea as the managing director, but registered me as the primary personal guarantor with unlimited financial liability. Under that corporate umbrella, they had systematically opened 6 high-limit commercial credit lines across 3 different national lenders without my knowledge or consent. The numbers on the audit trail were staggering in their ruthlessness. An American Express Business Platinum card carrying $75,000 in defaulted balances for commercial kitchen equipment. A Chase Inc. preferred line maxed out at $92,000 for luxury floral retainers and silk drapery imports. A Capital One Spark line drawing $148,000 for high-end audiovisual staging and custom velvet furniture rentals. In total, my family had racked up $315,000 in corporate debt. Every single penny tied directly to my personal creditworthiness. Looking at the earliest application date, November 14th, an old memory suddenly resurfaced with sickening clarity. I remembered Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house 6 months ago, where Sylvia had poured expensive Prosecco and raised a glass to family loyalty. Chelsea had wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind, kissing my cheek and telling me I was the generous heart that kept the family afloat. I had felt a quiet, foolish warmth in my chest that night, believing they were finally acknowledging my sacrifices. Looking at the digital timestamp now, I realized Sylvia had submitted the online guarantor application from her tablet while I was setting the dining table. They weren't showing affection to a daughter. They were inspecting their cash cow before slaughtering it. My phone chimed loudly against the center console at 8:40 a.m., breaking the silence of the cabin. The screen displayed the name of Arthur Vance, my senior real estate broker. I tapped the speaker icon, keeping my breath controlled and calm. "Arthur, good morning," I said quietly. "Kelsey, we have a massive emergency with underwriting," Arthur replied, his tone stripped of the warm, professional friendliness he had shown me over the past 2 years. The mortgage underwriters ran the final pre-closing credit verification at 8 a.m. for your West Oak townhome package. The entire application was flagged and rejected instantly. For 24 consecutive months, I had faithfully deposited $1,500 every single month into an escrow account to purchase a 3-bedroom brick townhome in West Oak. It was meant to be my safe haven, the first space in my life that would belong solely to me, free from my family's endless demands. Your credit score drop triggered an irrevocable systemic denial, Arthur explained, the sound of papers shuffling over the line. Under Section 14B of your non-contingent custom-build contract, if buyer credit fails lender standards within 14 days of closing, the agreement terminates automatically. Your $40,000 earnest deposit is fully forfeited to the builder, and the townhome goes back on the market at noon today. I did not cry. I did not plead with Arthur to talk to the underwriters or explain that my family had stolen my identity. I knew the cold logic of contractual real estate law better than anyone. I understand the terms. "Arthur," I said, my voice completely flat, "please email the formal termination paperwork to my assistant." I ended the call and placed the phone back on the console. $40,000 of my hard-earned money was gone, along with the dream home I had worked 2 years to secure. My family's parasitic greed had just destroyed my personal future before I could even step into it. I turned back to my laptop keyboard with a cold, sharpening focus. I initiated a full forensic data extraction from the Federal Credit Registry, downloading every single document associated with the 6 fraudulent commercial credit cards. Within minutes, my portable dashboard scanner printed out a crisp, 38-page master evidence file. Sheet after sheet rolled into my lap, digital application logs, IP addresses tracing back directly to Sylvia's home internet router, scanned forged signatures on guarantor forms, and billing receipts signed in Chelsea's sweeping handwriting. I held the complete, indisputable paper trail of their corporate fraud right in my hands. I stacked the 38 pages into a neat, rigid pile and slid them into a heavy navy blue folder. Right beside it lay Chelsea's glossy, gold-embossed opening invitation, featuring her smiling face above the bold gold lettering Chelsea Whitaker, founder and CEO. They believed they had won because I hadn't called them to scream or demand answers. They thought $315,000 of debt would force me to submit, pay off their cards, and save them to protect my own executive career. They had no idea that every dollar they stole was being compiled into an airtight federal indictment. They built their dream business on my stolen credit, and I was about to use their paper trail to dismantle their lives. At 10:45 a.m., I stepped into the federal precinct downtown to meet with Detective Marcus Miller of the State Police Financial Crimes Division. The small, windowless office smelled of stale coffee and industrial paper pressings. I placed my 38-page audit ledger on his desk, alongside my executive credential records and corporate banking disclosures. Detective Miller examined the paper trail line by line with practiced, methodical speed. He reviewed the IP addresses matching my mother's home router, the forged digital signatures on the 6 corporate credit lines, and the total accrued liability of $315,000. He verified my signed Form FTC 14039, the official federal identity theft affidavit, and slid it across the laminated desk toward me. Filling this out is a simple procedure. Ms. Whitaker, Detective Miller said, unthreading his fountain pen. You sign under penalty of perjury that you did not authorize Whitaker Lux Events LLC, nor did you act as a personal guarantor for these debts. I picked up the pen and signed my legal name on the 3 primary signature blocks without a single pause. Detective Miller picked up his official steel embosser, ready to stamp the raised federal seal into the thick parchment. But before he pressed it down, he stopped, his gray eyes locking onto mine with grave solemnity. I need you to understand the absolute finality of this document. Kelsey, he cautioned softly. Once this federal seal touches this affidavit, this ceases to be a family disagreement. This triggers an automated felony indictment for commercial identity fraud and grand larceny. Your mother and sister will face mandatory federal prison sentences, and you cannot withdraw this report once it enters the system. I looked at the black ink of my signature drawing on the page. I thought of my destroyed credit score, my lost $40,000 home deposit, and the 5 years I spent saving money for parents who viewed me as nothing more than a bank account to exploit. Press the seal. Detective, I replied quietly. The heavy metal embosser came down with a sharp, metallic thud, imprinting the raised federal crest directly into the paper. I had my weapon. At 1:15 p.m., I walked into a quiet bistro 2 blocks from the Grand Avenue venue site. Sylvia and Chelsea were already seated at a window table, surrounded by silk fabric swatches, floral arrangement samples, and gold-trimmed menu proofs. Chelsea didn't even look up as I pulled out a chair and sat down. She was busy admiring her gold-embossed opening brochure, her manicured fingers tracing her title as founder and CEO. Sylvia took a slow sip of her Earl Grey tea, looking at me with that familiar, patronizing air of maternal authority. I saw you locked the liquid safety account this morning, Kelsey, Sylvia said, setting her teacup down with a light clatter. Her voice was devoid of guilt, carrying only cold irritation. That was incredibly childish and irresponsible. Chelsea needed that $50,000 deposit cleared by noon for the Grand Avenue lease. Now the venue manager is threatening to withhold the keys until the opening ceremony. You took my social security number and forged my signature on 6 commercial credit lines. Sylvia, I said, keeping my voice low and completely even. You ran up $315,000 in corporate debt under my name. Chelsea let out an exasperated sigh, tossing her silk swatches onto the table. Oh, stop being so dramatic. Kelsey, Chelsea sneered, rolling her eyes. You make $300,000 a year as an executive. You don't need a pristine credit score right now. But I need this business to launch my career. Family assets belong to the entire family. You're supposed to support us, not hoard your money like a greedy miser. Sylvia leaned across the table, her tone turning sharp and demanding. You will call the bank, unlock the account, and authorize the corporate credit line for Chelsea's caterers by 5 p.m. today. Sylvia ordered, staring straight into my eyes. We raised you, Kelsey. We gave you everything. The very least you can do is let your sister have her moment without throwing a pathetic tantrum. I stared at the two of them in total, unyielding silence. The parasitic entitlement of a toxic family relies entirely on the assumption that the reliable child will always surrender her self-respect to keep the peace. They truly believed I was too cowardly, too concerned with family appearances, to ever strike back. They thought $315,000 of debt would break my resolve and force me to foot the bill. I rested my hand lightly over my handbag, where the notarized federal affidavit lay tucked inside its navy folder. Enjoy your grand opening on Friday, Chelsea, I said softly, standing up from the table. Make sure every single guest arrives on time. I walked out of the bistro into the afternoon air, leaving them to marvel at their own delusional triumph. They thought Friday afternoon was going to be the crowning glory of their social status. They had no idea it was going to be the day the federal government locked their doors forever. On Thursday morning at 8 a.m., I sat at my executive desk in my corporate office, reviewing the internal risk management framework used by major banking syndicates across North America. As a chief operating officer, my job requires me to understand the hidden enforcement machinery of financial institutions better than my family ever could. When federal identity theft charges are officially verified under Form FTC 14039, the Federal Reserve System automatically flags the offenders under the Interbank Risk Information System. It is not merely a drop in a credit score that can be rebuilt over time. It is a permanent, absolute blacklist across every FDIC-insured bank in the country. Once a person is placed on that federal blacklist, they are stripped of financial identity forever. They can never hold a personal checking account, secure a commercial mortgage, process credit card transactions, or even lease a commercial utility line under their own name. Sylvia, Harold, and Chelsea believed they were building an empire, completely oblivious to the fact that they were stepping directly into a financial execution chamber. At 11 a.m., a uniformed courier delivered a heavy ivory envelope to my office reception desk. Inside lay a gold-embossed brochure, printed on thick, 200-pound glossy cardstock, the third, most delusional layer of my family's grand spectacle. I unfolded the brochure flat across my mahogany workspace. The front cover featured Chelsea in a tailored silk blazer, posing regally against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Grand Avenue venue. The inside spread laid out their precise operational timetable with sickening pride doors opening at 5:30 p.m. A red carpet ribbon-cutting ceremony scheduled for exactly 6:15 p.m. and a lavish champagne reception hosted for 200 of the city's most prominent corporate executives and civic leaders. Tucked neatly between the pages was a handwritten card from my mother in her familiar, elegant calligraphy. Kelsey, she wrote, her words dripping with cold condescension. Your silence over the last 48 hours proves you finally understand your place in this family. You will arrive at the venue tomorrow at 5 p.m. sharp to settle the catering balance of $24,000 before our guests arrive. Wear an understated dress. You will stand behind Chelsea during the press photo so the local business journal sees a unified, supportive family. Do not embarrass us. Their arrogance was staggering. In their eyes, my refusal to scream or engage in petty phone arguments was a sign of complete submission. They truly believed I was so terrified of public embarrassment that I would hand over another $24,000 just to keep our family's dirty secrets hidden from high society. I picked up my desk phone and dialed Detective Marcus Miller's direct line at the FTC Fraud Division. "Detective Miller," I said, my voice completely steady. "I have the exact operational timeline for Whitaker Lux Events LLC. Go ahead." "Kelsey," Detective Miller replied over the secure line, the sound of paper shuffling in the background. "6:15 p.m. tomorrow," I stated, reading directly from the glossy brochure. "The ribbon-cutting ceremony takes place on the main stage in front of 200 corporate guests. That is the precise moment when all three managing co-conspirators Sylvia, Harold, and Chelsea will be standing together on stage." Detective Miller paused, typing rapidly on his terminal before letting out a slow breath. "We have a minor security complication on the building access registry." "Kelsey," he cautioned, "your mother used an old Civic contact in the Grand Avenue Building Management Office yesterday afternoon. She officially filed a private trespass warning against you, claiming you were a disgruntled relative. Your name and photograph have been placed on the lobby front desk watch list. If you attempt to enter those revolving doors alone tomorrow evening, private building security will detain you in the lobby before you ever reach the elevator." A cold, quiet satisfaction settled over me. Sylvia thought she was playing a master stroke, using a petty security watch list to block me from entering the building so I couldn't ruin Chelsea's big night after paying off their catering bill. She had inadvertently sealed her own trap. "That changes nothing, Detective Miller," I replied calmly. "In fact, it guarantees our success. You and your financial task force will meet me in the lobby at 6 to 5 p.m. Building security will step aside for police badges, and my family will see me walk onto their red carpet flanked by the agents who are about to freeze their lives. We will be waiting in the lobby at 6 to 5 p.m. sharp." Detective Miller confirmed. "Have your notarized affidavit ready." I hung up the phone, placed the glossy brochure back inside my Navy folder, and looked out my office window at the city skyline. A parasitic family operates on a single fatal delusion. They believe their victim's silence is caused by weakness, rather than patient calculation. They believe blood ties give them a permanent license to exploit, expecting the child they bled dry to keep protecting their reputation out of shame. Sylvia and Harold spent 30 years using my sense of filial duty as a leash. They never realized that once a leash is severed, the hand holding it is no longer safe. Tomorrow at 6:15 p.m., in front of 200 elite guests, my mother was going to find out what happens when the leash breaks forever. At 6 to 5 p.m., I walked through the revolving glass doors of the Grand Avenue venue, flanked by Detective Marcus Miller and 2 armed state troopers. 2 private building security guards immediately stepped out from behind the marble desk, hands raised to block my path. Detective Miller didn't even slow his stride. He unclipped his gold federal badge, holding it 3 inches from the lead guard's eyes. The guard's face went completely pale, his hands dropping instantly as he stepped backward, pressing the elevator override button for us in dead silence. We emerged into the main ballroom at 6:14 p.m. The space was staggering in its extravagance, bathed in the warm glow of 3 massive crystal chandeliers. 200 high-profile guests filled the room in black tie attire, clutching crystal flutes of vintage champagne. On the elevated velvet stage, my family stood under the blinding spotlight. Sylvia wore a jewel-toned emerald gown, holding her glass high. Harold adjusted his tuxedo cuffs beside her. In the center, Chelsea beamed for the local press cameras, holding a pair of giant gold ribbon-cutting scissors poised above a wide crimson banner. The MC's voice boomed through the surrounding speakers. 3, 2, Stop the ceremony. Detective Miller's voice cut through the room, magnified by the acoustic hall. I walked down the central marble aisle with slow, deliberate steps, my eyes fixed entirely on the stage. Chelsea froze, mid-smile, the gold scissors trembling in her grip. Sylvia's eyes flared with sudden, venomous rage as she grabbed the podium microphone. "Security! Escort this woman out immediately," Sylvia barked, her voice echoing harshly through the speakers. "She is an unhinged relative trying to ruin our families." Detective Miller stepped onto the stage, pulling a heavy navy folder from his briefcase and slapping it directly over the red velvet ribbon. He held up a federal seizure warrant signed by a United States magistrate, by order of the state attorney's office. All operations and assets of Whitaker Lux Events LLC are frozen immediately under felony warrants for commercial identity theft and corporate bank fraud. Detective Miller announced firmly. The entire ballroom went completely motionless. Sylvia's fingers lost all strength. Her crystal champagne glass slipped from her hand, smashing violently onto the marble floor, spraying Prosecco and glass shards across the hem of her emerald dress. She opened her mouth to speak, but her throat locked. Not a single sound came out. Chelsea's face drained of every drop of color. The heavy gold scissors clattered onto the stage floor with a loud metallic bang. Her knees buckled under her, and she collapsed sideways onto the red carpet, gasping for air like a drowning person. Harold lunged toward the microphone, his face turning an unhealthy shade of purple as he pointed a trembling finger at me. We. It's just a family," he stammered, his voice breaking into a breathless squeak before failing completely. Gasps erupted across the 200 guests. Prominent corporate executives immediately stepped backward, pulling their coats shut and walking briskly toward the exits without looking back. Flashbulbs from local business journalists exploded in rapid succession, capturing every second of my family's public execution. I stood at the foot of the stage in total, dignified silence. I didn't smile. I didn't shout. I simply watched their paper empire turn to dust before their very eyes. By noon on Monday, the federal seal locked Whitaker Lux Events LLC. Sylvia, Harold, and Chelsea faced felony indictments for identity fraud and grand larceny, placed on the federal interbank blacklist. Their personal checking accounts were terminated, leaving them in a cash-only existence with public defenders. For me, the FTC affidavit wiped the $315,000 debt completely clean within 72 hours, restoring my credit score to 815. On Tuesday evening, I stepped into my quiet living room and set a heavy cardboard shipping box on the floor. My hand was completely steady as I placed our 8-year-old family portrait face down at the bottom. Next dropped the gold-embossed brochure from Friday night, its cover creased and stained with a Prosecco ring from Sylvia's broken glass, followed by decades of birthday cards and porcelain ornaments. I pulled the clear packing tape across the flaps, its sharp, screeching sound sealing the seams shut. I uncapped a black marker, wrote my parents' address on the shipping label, and left the sender line completely blank. I set the box by the front door for tomorrow's courier, stepped over to my desk, and opened new property listings for a brick home built entirely on my own terms. I had not lost my dignity, my career, or my peace. I had simply paid the final bill to excise a parasitic past forever. Loyalty is a currency, and I refused to spend it on those who counterfeited mine.